So, welcome back, everyone, and maybe those of you that are joining us for our second half of conversation about Outskrts. So, we are going to continue the conversation. We're going to broaden the conversation with new folks. We're going to talk about a couple of the same topics, but also we're going to talk about larger discussion about what does it mean for our community. So, before we dig into everything, I am going to go through, and I have my paper, here we go, our panelists. So this side I'm going to go from my right to left. So on my right is Al Lampierre, 32-year-old Korean American, and prefers any pronouns that are respectful. So whatever you want. Next to Al is Freddie Dolphus. Did I say your last name correctly? Thank you. 27-year-old African American transmasculine. Pronouns they, them, or he and his. Next to Freddie is Lucky Garcia. Why did I forget how old Lucky is? We're friends too. 38-year-old Latinx lesbian, uses pronouns she, her, hers, or anything that is respectful. Next to Lucky is, going down my list, Reed Dorsey, 23-year-old African American bisexual, pronouns she, her, and hers. Thank you. I'm Diane Burkholder, 37, pronouns she, her, hers. Next on my left is Victoria Pickering, 33-year-old white bisexual, she, her, and hers. Next to Victoria is Samantha Ruggles, 59 Caucasian trans woman, also she, her, and hers. And next to Samantha is Adrian Gilchrist, did I get it right? African American lesbian, and pronouns are not what are your pronouns that you use? Whatever's respectful. Okay. Next to Adrienne, we have, I know your name, but I want to make sure I get everything down. Elizabeth Anderson, 60 plus, Caucasian, 60 and fabulous, 60 plus and fabulous, Caucasian lesbian, pronouns she, her, and hers. And last but not least, Raquel Washington, African American trans woman, and pronouns that you use? She, her, and hers. So everybody get a round of applause for our new panelists. So a similar format, we're going to ask each of our panelists to to discuss the question, but then we're going to ask the panelists to speak one another, and then we're going to have our audience also invite you. This is not a one-way conversation. We want to hear from you. And then also anybody on Facebook Live, I don't think we got any comments from anybody in the online world, so we welcome you to also contribute to this conversation. So our mics have to be good about passing mics, a little bit different this session. So the question that panelists, anybody who wants to chime in, is with your identity, if you want to talk a little bit about your identity, thinking about your identities, the multiple identities that you have, what parts or part of it do you feel like you have to suppress or hide in certain parts of your life? So that could be anything from your professional life, your social life, your faith community, your family, even the larger LGBTQ community. What parts of yourself do you feel like you cannot fully show up and be yourself and you have difficulty doing that? So anybody who wants to chime in and talk about your amazing identity, but maybe some space where you feel a little awkward sometimes.
My name is Adrian Gilchrist. I'm 46 years old. I work. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm 46 years old. I've been with my wife for 19 years. We have two boys, 23 and 19. I think one of the things that I face in my life right now is I'm a deputy administrator for the Wyandotte County Juvenile Detention Center. I'm over about 30, 40 employees. And the one thing that I face a lot is I'm in a male-dominant area. I go to a lot of meetings, and I find myself wanting to know how I should dress, because for years I wore a uniform. Now I have to wear regular clothes. I'm secure with myself, but when it's time to dress, I'm always asking my wife, does this look too masculine? And she's always, just be yourself. That's something that I face a lot, professional-wise, because I'm going to places with big people, and people still are very naive to who we are. And so I get a lot of stares. I get a lot of coworkers, like ones that are my friends. They be like, dang, that looks real manly or whatever, but I'm comfortable in my own skin. But then again, it's kind of confusing, like what the two young ones were saying earlier, because since you guys called us old, I sometimes find myself kind of, looking in the mirror and saying, well, should I wear this? Should I downplay it a little bit, or should I just be who I am? And I mean, that's something that I kind of, struggle with. I am the president of Black Pride of Kansas City. We're in the process of rebuilding. One of the things as far as in this community that I see is a lot of division. We have a lot of people that are over here. We got people over here. I'm not prejudiced, but I do see where we have the white pride and then we have the black pride over here. Not many people come to our stuff, but we go to a lot of the white pride stuff. I want to start getting to where we're rebuilding. And it's not a black pride thing. It's not a white pride thing. It's a pride altogether to me. And that is something that I'm looking to do. And I hope to meet a lot of people from this and maybe start collaborating and seeing what can we do to make things better. I mean, it's just like with the world, with the things going on nowadays, where we face a lot of that. None of us want to say that, but we are. So those are some of the things that I face in this community. So.
So I really appreciated this question as part of the panel, because I think that the first group really touched on a lot of the multitude of identities that we all embody within our community, but it can be challenging to be able to embody them simultaneously. For me, I tend to fall smack dab in the middle of a lot of identities. So I'm a bisexual woman. I've identified as bisexual since I was a teenager. And so I oftentimes find myself in situations. I'm married to a cisgender man. I oftentimes I'm not often. I'm always read as straight. So I have to reassert my identity routinely as part of my life. And I have to do that both within the straight world and also within queer communities, is asserting that I belong in queer communities, and then also asserting my bisexual identity with people who assume that I'm like one of them is a straight person, or that my husband and I are one of them as a straight couple. And so I'm constantly deciding, is it worth having to step in and be like, actually, when somebody misidentifies me in one direction or the other. So I think that that's something that as I've aged, I've become a little bit stronger about having to really stand with my identity and assert it, even when it makes other people uncomfortable, and even when it makes me uncomfortable sometimes, to have to change the subject of a conversation, to be like, actually, it's not okay for you to refer to my husband and I as a straight couple. And so that's been a big part of my life, is learning how to reassert that identity, but also then trying to determine how I'm comfortable within expressions of gender. Most days I'm incredibly masculine in my clothing and presentation when I'm at home, and then I kind of feel like I have to play dress up to go out into the professional world. So like put on a really nice dress and like throw on some big earrings, even though that's not necessarily reflective of my personality, but it allows me to navigate the waters of my professional life in a way that's really simple. So I feel like I'm constantly kind of jumping back and forth within my own identities, and whereas all of them kind of fall like I said, sort of smack dab in the middle. So, yeah.
I guess it's me. Hi, my name's Samantha Ruggles, and as far as the question, what's that? The question about things that I need to suppress, I kind of turned that around a little bit and started thinking about things that I need to navigate in my position. I work for the Kansas City Center for Inclusion, so I have to navigate a lot of spaces. And one of the things that I've had to learn to navigate and this is just not in my role professionally, but just in my life, is my womanhood. The way that I have to process emotion is so much different now. I'll use anger as an example. You know, pre-transition, I handled anger probably not in a healthy way. Now I tend to process that more internally, but not in an unhealthy way, to be able to learn how to express my needs as a woman as opposed to how I would do it pre-transition as a man. And learning how to sometimes bite my lip and listen, learn to listen. And that is part of the second question with regards to, you know, do I feel included in the LGBTQIA community of Kansas City? Well, the easy answer is yes, but we are a broad community. You had mentioned that we are a divided community, and in a lot of ways we are. I think there are some challenges unique to Kansas City. One of the major metropolitan areas, it's on a state line, so we have different issues on the Kansas side as opposed to the Missouri side. Wyandotte County versus Johnson County, demographically quite a bit different. Then on the Missouri side, we have 5-6 counties, and all of those are different. East of Truist, west of Truist, north of the river, south of the river. So I think those are some of our challenges. So to say that I feel part of the entire community, then the answer becomes no, because I'm learning to try to navigate all those communities in my professional role.
Hi, everybody. I'm Raquel Washington. I'm a musician. For the audience. Okay. I'm a musician and struggling talent. And I guess the thing that I suppress because of labels and things like that is, for the longest time, it wasn't trying to achieve an identity per se to me. I started my transition just because I kind of wanted to be left alone from attention from being a cisgendered gay male. So, which was really hard to do for a long while before I figured, you know, if you did just a little bit extra, maybe someone would just look over you instead of calling you a faggot or trying to beat you up or something like that. I was never insecure in that fact. It just got tiring. I wanted to progress and be a better person than the one I felt like I could be with that extra hassle on me. But as the years have come to grow, I love the femininity in me. I do not classify myself as a woman. I am transgender female, I guess. We keep talking about the labels. So I think I was telling Star when we were talking about this, it's like, she's like, what are your pronouns? I'm like, they're she, her, hers, but I don't want to be the one to say I might be G and C, or I felt like I was just too old to figure it out, you know? Like I wanted to just be stable in the thought of that this is who I am and this is what it is. So as far as the changes, I could totally agree with everybody who says that they reinvent themselves every day. Something happens to put a thought on your mind, and it's sometimes something we can't just go out and talk about with other people, so we find other ways. I don't agree with a lot of the ways that we are promoted and the things that are extended to us. As far as education goes, it sends us through way too much of a runaround. I think more circles like this would be great and helpful for people who are going through that in the early stages of finding their identity, and knowing that owning who you are doesn't have to be a big billboard that contests everything that everybody else says. It's just me striving to be the best me I could be, and generally trying to be a better person. So.
You do not have to go to the side if you want to go.
I might as well. I'm 60 way plus. I'm the oldest panelist at 66. And I'm unlike other lesbians my age, which for a long time, I came out in my early 40s. I was happily married to a man. We still are friends. We're great friends. We've been divorced for 25 years. I love my adult sons. And when I came out, I wore dresses, I carried a purse, and they didn't want anything to do with me. I was looking forward to my peeps, and they weren't claiming me. And I found the gay men groups were actually welcoming. And one was Front Runners. I joined that 21 years ago. I don't go all the time, but I'm very comfortable there. We'll take a group picture. It's 50 men and me. And it's funny because they'll say, does anyone know any gay events? Elizabeth. And it's because I'm on the radio for the 10th Voice, and we do LGBT events, people, etc. here in town. It's been on the air for 29 years. And I'm proud of it because I found my people. My fellow host, the first week is Philip Hooser. He's Native American. There's me. I do an LGBTQ book club. There's Rashawn Gilmore, who does Unbossed and Unbothered, and he is neither. And then Una Nowing and Fiona Nowing. Una is a proud transgender woman, and they do trans talk. And so I've had to find my own people, and as I've grown more comfortable with myself, sometimes people ask, well, what was your favorite decade? Truthfully, it's my 50s and 60s, so you have that to look forward to if you want. I got a job in rural Missouri at a very conservative trade organization of 330 people and was scared to come out because I was lucky to find a job at 55 as a copy editor. But I realized I had to tell my department, and I kept it close because they were making fag jokes, and I thought, I can't do this. So I came out. Then Roland Park, where I live, was trying to pass an anti-discrimination ordinance, and I spoke to city council with my sons, because I've lived there for 25 years, 6 times, and I told my boss I didn't dare take a TV interview, because people were already seeing me talk to the council, but if they saw me do a one-on-one interview, I'd lose my job. It's a right-to-work state. So the next time, I'd say it was about 3 months later, I was asked to sign off on the new handbook. And I was a good halfway through it, and I realized that sexual orientation and gender identity were protected all the way through on every page. And I went to my boss and I said, how'd this happen? And she said, well, now you can go on TV. And that's the kind of difference you can make by being yourself. You know, you don't have to be in a huge group. I didn't know she was going to fight for that with human resources, but everybody went, well, yeah, Elizabeth needs to be able to go on TV, which I didn't want to do. But anyway, I have found my people, and it's across the spectrum. I gave rides every week to a young, I met him at 18, then he became genderqueer, and then she became a young woman. And we would talk about all sorts of stuff on the way to the Northeast Kansas City. And she said, how old are you? And I told her, and she said, oh my God, you're my grandmother. And I said, get out of my car. But no, I feel very comfortable with all ages, and sometimes people do say, well, it's not really for your age group. And I'm not having it, because I love to learn, and it is.
Thank you. All right. We were not trying to intentionally do a division from one side versus the other, but now we can go to the other side. So whoever wants to speak, there is a mic.
I didn't really see this question as something that I'm suppressing. I try to live my authentic self. It's taken me 38 years to do that and be confident with that. It's also taken a lot of trauma, a lot of pain, a lot of work. But I'm Latinx, Chicanx, and what I have noticed in Kansas City with the LGBT community is that I don't fit. There is a huge problem in the city with racism, classism, and sexism. And there's a huge problem among women and queer women with biphobia and transphobia. And that's for us, that's for women, and that's for, spaces like this for us to break that down, right? We see it everywhere. We see it in the clubs. We see it in our community organizations. We see it in the Pride Festival, right? Why is it that the leadership is mostly white men? And when women try to have a voice there, right, they're silenced. That's a problem. And we need to change things like that. And we've been able to see that we can't count on men to do that. Like, we have to do that. Queer women have to do that ourselves, right? And And as far as racism goes in the LGBT community here in Kansas City, that's where I'm doing the work for my community and for Black and brown queer people, because we see it, and it's starting to be very destructive, I think, to our community. Where are the white gays when it's women of color, trans women of color, that are receiving the most violence in this country, right? Where are the white gays when her picture's right up there when Tamara Dominguez was murdered, right? Where are they when a Black person is murdered in this country every single day by the police, right? Where were they with the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, right? What they weren't doing was reaching out to queer Latinx communities. What they weren't doing was offering support to those Black and brown people. What they were doing was making it about them, right? And that's why we're forced, the community, with the oppression of women of color and people of color, queer people of color, we're forced to create our own spaces, right? Our own spaces for queer people of color, because we're not seeing that. We're not seeing that inclusion right now. And that's why all of this that we're doing right now is so important. And we have to do it. And we just cannot count on men, and especially white men, to make a space for us. I think that we have to take it. Right? So I see this question as not what am I suppressing, but it's like, what am I after? Right? And that's what I'm after. I think that's a challenge for our community and a challenge for women in Kansas City. So.
Are you next? Yeah, I can go. I know. I was like, well, shit. Whoo, shit. I don't. For me. No, just for the audience. Oh, for the audience. Hey, audience. For me, I'm a general manager of a boxing gym. So, sports and anything generally fitness related is very gender binary. So it's very male or female. And I'm one of the few Black people. Actually, thinking about it, I'm the only Black person on the job. Well, shoot. So, trying to navigate being a person of authority, being also, maybe Black, probably one of the few Black people of authority, and try to navigate, when things have to get done, does it seem like I'm about to have Black rage? Am I about to have an attitude, so to speak? When things just have to be done. It's just, that's what it has to be. And then trying to navigate the space within the binary, and I'm pretty androgynous, so when we recently moved, and the bathrooms were women and men, and I started freaking out because I was like, we used to have our own bathrooms, and I was like, shoot, I have our own bathrooms, I can go to any bathroom I want, I'm fine. I'm like, this is a problem, I can perceived as a Black man go into a woman's bathroom, it can be, hell can break loose, and I'm like, and it's not good if I don't have a white witness. That's what I always say. I always have to have my white witness. If I don't have one, it ain't gonna be good. And then if I go into a men's bathroom, it doesn't generally end well. And my boss didn't really understand. And at first she sort of wrote it off. She's like, I'm an ally. And I was like, whoa. Just because you're an ally doesn't mean you understand the struggle. There's people that have literally been harassed and darn near, beaten up because they went into the bathroom that they felt felt most comfortable in, yet others thought that they were in the wrong bathroom. So I think, within sports and also the fitness industry, just because I am also, I'm an athlete, I do mixed martial arts, it's very binary. So, when speaking out on things like, gender equality within sports itself, or, just speaking about how sports generally, it's pretty racist and it's also pretty sexist. And I have to always come to terms with that. The reason why I'm really hesitant about going into women's mixed martial art. It's very about how you perceived in media. Are you cute enough for those guys who barely know anything about the sport so they can, watch pay-per-view tickets of you, versus how skilled you are, how much time you put in the gym training with most people of the opposite sex, 200-pound dudes of the opposite sex, blood, sweat, and tears. They don't really care about that. And as far as within the fitness industry, within the LGBT community, I really want to make it more accessible. Fitness should be accessible for everyone, especially as a form of self-awareness, and I mean stress relief, general. Just because, we're all talking about our identities. We know ourselves almost better than most people out in the world. We question ourselves and re-question ourselves, and we're still questioning ourselves, but we're honest about that. Most people outside this room, they think they know everything about themselves, and they really don't. And that's the same thing that happens when you work out. You thought you could run that mile, and then you're like, okay, I can really run about, 0.2 miles, and then you're like, okay, I'm struggling for the next 0.8. But that's what it is. And I really want to, open that area for, people who, very often feel left out of the fitness and sports industries. Mm-hmm.
Hello, my name is Reed, 23, bisexual, black woman. Use her, she, all that good jazz. So I guess the biggest suppressing it would be is being in a black Christian family. Who wants to bring your girlfriend home when everybody's like, who's the lesbian? Like, who is she? Your friend? Your girlfriend? Who is that? So yeah, that would be the biggest suppression in my life. It's almost like I live in subdivisions. Like when I have a boyfriend, he can come home. When I have a girlfriend, it's like, you can meet my friends and my gay friends. But it's like trying to mix it all together kind of gets messy sometimes. And no, I really don't feel comfortable in the community, like the gay community in Kansas City, because like they said, it's a lot of division. It's like, oh, you bisexual, so you a dyke. Like, that's what they call you, a D-dyke. Like, so you like boys or you like girls? I'm like, but I like both. What you mean? I'm bisexual. I said that. Still, it's still not good enough for a lot of people. So they like, you're not gay enough over here. You're not straight enough over here. For your family, you're not a Christian enough. It's just a lot of that. So that would be my biggest struggle, being bisexual. That's it.
Hi, Al Ampere. Prior to giving any specific modifiers, I guess I will preface that I am adopted. My parents are from Wisconsin, so when you see them and you see me, you're like, wait, that's different. So I've been actually struggling with modifiers for a while, not based on sexual identification or gender. And it was interesting. I used to list them all out as a kid. It was like, at one point in time, I was Christian. But it was always adopted. It was always something else first before you get to Al. Now I'm fucking Al. And whatever I want to tell you after that, I'm going to determine based on the audience. So I've always considered myself, not always, that's a lie. Now, after 32 years on this planet, I can say that I feel pretty fluid with a lot of things. So, again, pending the audience, I see my modifiers and how I identify as, it's always a constant variable. So, and I think it's interesting that we're talking about identifiers when it's clearly based on, our identifiers are restricted to this language, this social construct, right? And then so many of us are like, well, I'm in between these things. It's like, well, why don't we fucking make up a different word? Sorry, I swear a lot. It happens. I just think it's interesting that we're trying to identify ourselves within this language that wasn't built for us, right? What else? Oh, because I am fluid, I guess I feel like I can move relatively freely through spaces. At my current jobs, they know that I am Al. I try to be authentically Al, just because I like alliterations. So I swear at work. I wear what I want. My coworkers are used to me in the bathroom now, but when I go into public spaces, I do avoid public restrooms. If I do have to use a women's-specific restroom, I try the first person I meet. I make eye contact and I smile to make them to let them know that I am not going to attack them. Actually, the first really bad bathroom incident happened in San Francisco. That was weird. Chicago was a lot easier. Coming down here, I was like, I'm going to die, but I haven't yet. So, win on this team. What else? There's something else. Sorry, I had to write notes because I hate public speaking. Biggest challenges, I guess, mostly have come from within the community. And because of, I think, our obsession with this verbiage, these labels, because we're looking for it for ourselves, a lot of people have assigned me with things prior to even talking to me. So I get lesbian a lot, and it's like, no, I would never identify as that. I never have. Maybe asked me prior to calling me that to other people. I find it interesting that we do that. We've all talked about is this weird division in the community, and we all are struggling with our own shit. But then we project our own shit on everybody else. It's like, what the fuck? And, yeah, I don't know. That's all I got.
There's a lot. So I appreciate that. But I did hear a lot of similarities. I think similarities that came through from the first panel, but kind of more touching on, I heard about folks dismantling these boxes and these labels. They're often helpful, but they also are very limiting. I heard navigating spaces and emotions, like depending on the context of who you're with or who you're around, how much you can actually be yourself, whether that's be friends or family. I heard a contrast between social and professional a lot, and social looks very different, whether it's the queer community or whether it is just your friends in general. And then a lot of subdivision. I heard that. I feel like that's an ongoing discussion, our subdivision. And subdivisions aren't necessarily always a bad thing, right? But how do we honor and give space to a subdivision? Just because someone is not part of a quote-unquote majority group doesn't mean that their group isn't just as valid. You talked about bisexuality and biphobia, and we look at the numbers, and 50% of LGBTQ folk are bi. But I think a lot of folks stay closeted and either stay in, quote unquote, the straight community or the lesbian community, if that's the term they use, and don't have a space. So that means half of this, if we're going to go with that, half the people in this room are bi, right? So what does that mean, right? So with kind of what people touched on, I want to give the panelists an opportunity to, if something resonated with you, if you wanted to have a further question or something came up based off of what somebody else said, and then we'll open up to the audience and the Facebook Live folks.
I actually heard a couple of things that resonated with me after speaking. One was with you, young lady. I forgot your name, please. Lucky. And it was it drove me to the thought that maybe more education for heterosexual people or cisgender people would kind of cut down a little more a little much of the problems that we have in communicating and getting along with each other. I think transitioning for us, as we've agreed that we do on a regular basis, would be a lot easier if we looked at it like us transitioning into the world and not proving ourselves, to each other forever, because we're gonna just be family members in some right, because we're so much alike in so many different areas, and the variables that make us up as individuals are important enough to get over and try to change the world again, because it's just not helping for us to just be we're like preaching to the choir here. We have a lot of allies here, and we have a lot of questioning transgenders and the them, theys, and theirs, the gender non-specifics. We're all here to figure, stuff out. I think if we kind of incorporate those men and have them being taught by people who are driven to be good people, it's like I don't want to drive to push a point or to prove a point. I just want to be a good person. And if I can see that me being a little bit uncomfortable or upset at times because somebody's not paying attention to what it is that is hurting me, and me striving daily to get over that, to be a better person, I think in doing that, we teach each other and we coexist a lot better. That was just a thought. Thank you.
I want to address what Lucky said, because I agree. Often we white people don't reach out, don't address things, and I do the Santa Moran Radio Book Club, and her vision, she died at 46, the month that it was to begin, and asked me to take it over because she knew I shared her vision, that it be LGBTQ and that it feature writers of color. And so far we've done Audre Lorde, Jewel Gomez, Penny Mickleberry, Daisy Hernandez, Richard Blanco, Charles M. Blow, Janet Mock, and there are others. But it's also important to me that the panelists be of color. And I always remind myself before the show that I'm the moderator. It's not about me. I'm the facilitator. If Miguel Morales is on, I want to hear what Miguel has to say. I want to hear what Rashawn has to say. And so, and in editing the sound, I frequently take my segues out because they're not critical to the discussion. They're just getting me to the next guest. And I think it's real important, and I've learned I can't sit in the corner. It'd be easier to sit at home and watch TV. I have to put myself out there, and sometimes, people yell at me or call me names, and oh well. I like my different friends, and I like crossing those boundaries. And if someone calls me queer, I'm fine, even though I'm older. I'm fine with being called a gay man in a lesbian's body, which I am called regularly. I'm fine with being called a lesbian. People call me bisexual because I was happily married to a man for 17 years. I'm fine with that, Just don't call me a slur and be mean.
And the other panelists want to address? Yeah.
I actually resonated with what you said, because were you the only other bisexual person out of all the panels? I think so, low key. But yeah, how you were saying, like, some days you want to dress more masculine and some days you want to dress more feminine, but people feel like because of a label, they should be able to tell you literally, like, it be days where I want to wear a dress with a full face, and it's like, dudes is like, ooh, and girls too are like, ooh, but then it's days where I'm like, oh yeah, hoodie and overalls is what's the tea today. Dudes are like, so are you a stud? I'm like, bro, I've never been a stud. What? So yeah, it's just a lot of that labeling and way you dress, and yeah, that was really something I was like, yeah, I go through the same stuff.
Well, in regard to labels, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I kind of agree with some of the panelists who said before, when they were sitting up here before, that they appreciate the labels. I came up in a time when queer was a slur, and I've had to kind of change my own thoughts and think about what does it mean to reclaim language, and I appreciate that as well. But I think where I'm at right now is, can we use this language? Can we reclaim this language without erasing our culture, right? Why is it that I see, I have so many friends, I'm queer, but their entire life they've lived this cis, hetero, normative life, and they have no idea that the Stonewall riots were started by, trans women of color. They have no idea about the history, and they also don't know about culture. So are we, by embracing a new language, I guess that's my question for the community, right? Are we, by embracing this new language, are we erasing our culture? Or is this more like an evolution of culture, of LGBT or queer culture, right? So that's kind of where I'm at right now with trying to reconcile language into my own life and my own identity.
I'd love to add much to that. I can go with both mics. I know, I say things and then it takes me a second. No, I literally meant that both microphones will reach me. Okay, so yeah, I think that you bring up a really good point, and I think that's also where a lot of bisexual people have a reticence from entering into communities, into queer communities specifically, because oftentimes there is this feeling of I do pass in a straight world, and sometimes I do and sometimes I don't, but a lot of times I do, and I don't deal with the same experiences that my best friend does, where she can have a different relationship with her partner at the Target at Ward Parkway than the Target in Blue Springs. That is a thought process that she goes through. I don't have to go through that thought process. And so there absolutely is a sense of not only an external feeling of maybe you don't belong, but also that internalized, I haven't fought for it in the same way, and I don't fight for it every day in the same way. And so I think there's a lot of elements of that are really isolating for bi people, is that internalized oppression of not only being told I'm not queer enough, but telling myself I'm not queer enough for a lot of reasons. But I also love the point you brought up about the history and the culture and what our community has been through, because I think another thing that I personally deal with is I'm well known as a fun sponge. I can walk into a really great room full of people who are partying and really enjoying life, and I'm like, hey guys, let's talk about this topic, violence. And I think that that's something that also as a bi woman I struggle with, because I want to sit down in a room full of queer women and be like, hey guys, can we talk about the health disparities between other members of our community and bi women? We have the highest rates of depression, the highest rates of suicidality within cisgender communities, within the LGBTQ community. We have the highest rates of sexual violence experience. And immediately it's oh no, but this is a space where we are talking about pride, and this is a space where we're talking about music, and this is a space where we're talking about celebration. And so I feel there's a shift, even in some of our spaces of we have come so far, and so we are in a celebratory mode and not always having an opportunity to talk about some of the traumas that our communities are experiencing. So now I'm just babbling, so I'm going to hand the mic over to someone else.
I don't really know if this is a declarative statement or more of an observation. Sorry, speaking up. It seems interesting that you said both, implying that there is an either or in my mind. And again, it comes back to, I guess, this weird thing of language. And I talked to Diane about this a while ago, is that I've always seen it as a spectrum, as a singular 2D line, right? When really, from our previous panel, it seems like it's clearly more spherical / 3D, right? But it's all of our stuff that comes back to is the history of this line, right? You're either here or you're here. If you're somewhere in the middle, then we don't like you because we don't know what to do with you, right? But I don't know. I just...
I think you bring up a point, many of you bring up a point, is that things are shifting and they're not always just one thing. And I think kind of to Lucky's point is marginalized communities can't wait for those in privileged spaces to make spaces for them, because that's why they're in the spaces they are, because they keep maintaining those spaces. So what does it mean for communities to say for us and by us unapologetically, and they're going to be on our terms, and if you want to support that, these are our rules, right? And I think that that's the point of this space, is to say, yeah, there's spaces that are technically for us, but are we really there? And we might be able to walk in that door or go to that meeting or participate in that online forum, but do we really feel like we can fully be there, right? And a lot of us are saying, No, not really. I can bring this piece of me, but I can't bring that piece of me. And so what does this mean in order to create this space? You know, Star will talk a little bit more about the festival that's coming up this summer. And I think a lot of us here and a lot of you in the audience, we have our communities. It might not be formalized. We got our friend group. We make our communities, right? We have people that come over, but that's one of the challenges for the queer community here in town is if you get here, and I'm going to say this as a person who's been here for 7 years, and I've heard this even from queer folk that are born and raised here, where the hell are my people, right? Because you look at the gay stuff, quote unquote, the gay stuff, and then you're like, this doesn't look like me, or I see where I am one face of everything else, right? I'm the token. So what does it mean that those that are most marginalized, those are not on the line on one end or the other, are actually driving and centering the conversation? Because from what I'm hearing from most of the panelists is most of us don't fit on that line anyway, but we're told we need to be on that line. So, yeah, go ahead.
And just to add on to that, I was sitting and thinking earlier when the first panel was up, if anybody else had felt like we were accepting the labels just simply to communicate with people better, just to not be so upset when I feel like somebody didn't know. You know, I'm a really sensitive person, so for a long time, when people didn't know what to call me and then they called me the wrong thing or did it on purpose, am I just saying this to give myself a spectrum for them or to let us know? Or because it's kind of really hard to congeal if everything has to be in a group. So if all of us who just needs to name ourselves and to be confident and for us to get along in society and for society to treat us with respect, if we say, okay, it's cool because it helps them get along with us. It's not you're stepping on my toes or making me placing me in a sensitive train of thought. And yes, I'm G and C, or yes, I'm transgender. And like that really is a question for me now because I'm hearing that it's okay. It's okay to be 33 and not know exactly where you fit in, and to learn that the variables of your life doesn't exactly mean what other people consider it to be. So higher learning is great for me right now.
Let's expand. So I want to open this conversation also up to the audience and those that are Facebook Live. What are some things that come up for you or questions that you have for the panel? Kind of something I just heard from Raquel. It's been echoed is the stuff that we're having conversations in our community, it's projection of our own shit onto somebody else, right? If we feel uncomfortable with somebody else's identity, it's because we're really dealing with our own securities and we're questioning our own stuff, right? Which is very valid to question our stuff, but how does that manifest and come out, right? How do we do that in a healthy way that we don't squash somebody else's identity to maintain our own? So kind of with that, like, how can our community do better, right? Like, there's many different faces and communities represented here. How can we do better? What questions that you might have for the panelists? I see a hand back there, one up here. And one in the back. So 1, 2, and then 3. We don't have the ball mic anymore, so we're just speaking up. Do we have to pass this one, or do you have one back there? Oh, I need to repeat the question. Go ahead. Sorry, I forgot our instructions. Go ahead.
Okay, you're talking about how can we take and bring identities together. And I know we talked about having Black Pride and White Pride and things like that. But as a white woman, particularly for the people of color, what can I do and how can I come into your spaces and help to bridge those gaps?
Okay, so the question for those particularly on Facebook Live that might not have heard that is there's these various types of brides for different communities, and how can she as a white woman help come into the space and help provide space for that community and help that community?
I wouldn't necessarily say come into the space because, we're trying to make the space. Typically, it's for white allies, it's typically working within the space that you're at. I'm a political science major. I always tell people when Trump got elected, I was like, there's a whole lot of white people who voted for Trump. And I was like, if you think about it, at least one Trump voter. So I was like, everything begins at home and then it sort of merges out from there. So, I always tell people, do what you can within your inner circle. When you think that's pretty solid, have a good solid think on that one. And then just sort of spread it, and generally, we all know at least one person that we can talk to and be like, yo, you've been saying some problematic things, or you have access to things that this group or these people can actually use. And we can sort of build on that. So it's not necessarily going into the spaces anymore. It's working within the space that you have better. That's what it will be more like.
I was pretty much going to say what you were saying. Just being active. Don't talk about it, be about it. That's what we do a lot. We say we want to see change, but nobody's putting that foot out to do change. I mean, it sounds good right now, but when we leave this door today, will we really change? Or will we just talk about it? But being involved, come and see what we're doing, just like how we come and see what others are doing. I mean, just what you said. I mean, be a part of that change.
Were you asking because you're wanting to implement yourself in a space, or are you looking for work in the space, or you said bridge the gap? Like, how do you actively want to bridge the gap?
For instance, she talked about there's no white gay males that come and offer help. And I'm not a white gay male, but I want to help. I want to wherever I can be best used to help.
I think the key would be to not look for an immediate job, just coming in and in spaces where it's okay to come in and, it's inclusive to everybody, and being an ally and being a good listener. And then you're sharing with your community when you go away from here. You're supposed to come to take away from the add into part kind of, confuses the space sometimes. So just being a good listener and sharing with your friends what you learn with the intentions of learning something somewhere else, like me in your space or you in mine. It would be me being inquisitive about what goes on in these spaces.
So I have a couple of points that might be helpful, Carrie. First, I would like to say that for the white LGBT people, we don't need to be saved. We're going to do that ourselves. Okay? So we don't need somebody to come into our space and say, how can we fix this and how can we save y'all, right? No. But we can also be welcoming of other people into our spaces. And but what that means for you might be, how could you learn? How can you listen? How can you help with sharing resources, right? How can you listen and let, without taking over the space, let people of color, form their own leadership. When we're talking about business, when we're talking about other community organizations, right? A lot of people here are involved with LGBT groups or other kinds of community organizations. I think it's very important to be inclusive from the jump. What that means is including people of color, including marginalized folks in your leadership, on your boards, all that. And it's much harder to go back and do that. But there are ways that you could do that too, right? And it's not enough. It's not enough on a Facebook group just to say, oh, we're an inclusive group, but then you don't walk the walk, right? And then, your whole, if your whole board is white, but we have friends of color, or this is for them too. No, it's not. We have to see it. And one of those ways that you can do that is to commit to those struggles, those issues, those social justice struggles that people of color, that women of color, that queer women of color, that trans women of color are facing, is committing to that, right? That's how you become an accomplice, not an ally, right? Because we don't need to be saved. We need somebody to go alongside us, right?
White person to white person. There are spaces we get invited into all the time. And those spaces are very white, and they remain very white, and our participation in them keeps them very white. And so one thing that I recommend is when you are asked to the table, so if someone from White Pride says, hey, we want to have a trans woman sit at this table with us, right? Because I'm sure that happens to you from white gay spaces, right? So when that happens and you walk into that room and that room is filled with other white people, because that happens to me all the time too, I think we have an opportunity in those to say, yeah, absolutely, I will sit on this board and I'm bringing someone with me. And I'm going to not require that person to always speak on behalf of their race or their community or their group. I'm going to speak with them, and I'm going to be a part of that. But I think that oftentimes there's an instinct to be like, you know what, I'm not going to participate in this white-only space. I'm going to say, no, I won't be on your board because your board has no people of color. But I can say, I will absolutely be on your board, and I'm bringing people of color to this board, or you can take me or leave me. And so I think there's an opportunity there not to necessarily leave spaces and go into spaces that were intended for and created by folks of color, but to say, these spaces that have a lot of power and a lot of resources need to be broken down, and we as white people need to be doing the breaking down. So I think that's one step that we can take, one tiny thing that we can do to break down those power structures.
Yeah, thank you. We have a question or comment? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
One of the things that just really speaking on, I can't recall your name, but wow, Lucky, thank you. It gets tiring to always have to be the one to point out, oh, you shouldn't do that. It's offensive. It becomes just exhaustive. I work in a position that requires that of me, and some days I want to say, just don't be a dick. I don't want to have to tell you that this is the proper way that you should speak to a black woman. I don't want to have to tell folks that this is the proper way that you should speak to folks just because they come from a different socioeconomic, pick a label, right? And so it does, right, pick one, pick an oppression. You don't have to talk to, and we all deserve respect. So while I can definitely admire the question of how can I, as this privileged individual, come into this not privileged situation, because I'm a loser, I don't have a better word for you, and become the savior. You're absolutely right. I don't need a savior. I believe in Jesus, so I have one. Thank you. Right? But sometimes just sit and observe. What I have learned and what I have noticed being in corporate America is you bring your privilege to me. And please understand, I don't do real well with folks with privilege. I just don't. But it gets absolutely exhausting. So sometimes instead of asking a question, just sit down and observe. Because I promise you, if you plant yourself in a space and you're truly there with the intent to learn and to listen, you will hear everything that it is that you need to hear. And folks who are willing to be those educators will open themselves up, and they will say things, and they will give you some social cues to say, hey, I'm the person that you can ask about about these particular situations. But in order to catch that, you have to be active, you have to be engaged, and you have to be willing. And so I think a lot of times when we have folks come into these spaces, they're not there for that. They're there to be a savior. They're there to say, yep, I did my not privileged quota for the month, and I'm good. Well, you can keep that. Okay.
Say it.
So I'm supposed to repeat that for Facebook Live. But essentially, don't be a savior. Don't be a... It was loud enough. I figured it was. Just wanted to check. Actually, back here we had a hand, and I'm sorry I forgot you earlier. So I want to go back to you, and then here and there. And I also want to be cognizant of time. We have about 10 more minutes in this, so then we're going to wrap it up. But go ahead.
So I hear a lot about labels and everybody saying that you can label yourself or you can't label yourself. So me, as a woman that dress dominant but is very feminine, why do I have to be labeled as a stud and get discriminated by my own people, by the LGBTQ people, just as much as I get by the heteros. Like, we should be more supportive. You know, I date dominant women, always have. I've dated feminine women. But why do I get judged because of the way I look and date dominant women? It looks down upon. You know, why do we have to kind of put ourselves in a box and have those same roles as heterosexual people?
Yes.
Why can't femmes date femmes, studs date studs, whoever date whoever? You know, why do we have to put ourselves in that box?
Yeah.
And how can we get more of the LGBT community to support us in whatever decision of who we love?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Was that loud enough? Do I need to repeat part of it? Buck, our sound person, was that loud enough? So essentially the question was, as a masculine presenting, dominant dressing, I didn't want to put woman, black woman, what does it mean to do that, but feel discriminated by also being feminine as well, and that discrimination of not being able to be both parts of those at the same time, and the discrimination that happens with dating other people that also present as more dominant. That was essentially the comment, so.
Thank you very much for bringing that up. That has been essentially my entire out existence. I present very masculine, but I love singing random ass ditties. And I will just do that shit. And then people are like, what the fuck? You're supposed to be this butch stud, whatever. Like, no. And I will do that, whatever. I think it comes back to this history of this linear line, right? Where we feel from the trauma that we've experienced, because it's always been in this linearity. And it's part of that projection, right? And it's like, I've felt this shit, and I'm processing it, but I'm still going to dish it out because I've gone through shit. Unfortunately, I think the education is not limited to those who are cis white folk. There's a lot of education that needs to go into our own communities so that kind of fucking shit doesn't happen. It's like, I'm going to be this and this and this, but you can't be that because I don't get it. It's like, well, then learn more about it. Yeah, Google that shit.
Did anybody else want to?
I think we both did.
I think what I heard more was, why do I have to be a part of something instead of being respected for just who I am, and that being okay betwixt us? And I think it should be absolutely, because that would promote the same attitude in our world. Like, if no one should ever come and look at a sister or a brother and feel uncomfortable. So if you are clear that I dress like this, but I'm clearly a woman and that's okay with me, that should be okay with you if we're going to interact at all. And then it's kind of like, are you being a dick or not? And then, I mean, as adults, I mean, we get to walk away from that shit every day, because if you're not being, authentic, or you're looking to hold me down, what the hell do I need to deal with you or worry with your opinion ever? So.
We had a couple quick other comments, and I want to also get the other two folks, but I want the panels to address that.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in. It's almost like an American thing, not even just a gay thing. A black, you notice every community, it's always a sub, like, oh, you're black, but you're light skinned, but you're dark skinned, but you're natural, but you wear weave. Like the gay, how do we have a community for us, but we're the ones breaking it down? I've never, why can't women be stud for stud? Why can't I wear overalls and date a boy? Like, why can't, I just don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I see that what you're talking about is this feminine, masculine kind of dynamic is a social construct, right? Just like, it could be argued that racism is, it like monogamy is, or, anything else, even religion. But I also see that these roles that you're talking about and this prejudice against what our appearance is, right? We as women, as femmes, we're constantly trying to fit into what white men are telling us is beautiful and is feminine, right? And that's bullshit. And it has to do with assimilation. I'm Latina, so we have generations and generations of assimilation, right? And that's all, to put it in a nutshell, it's like we need to be as white as possible so they don't treat us like the black people, right? And gay, LGBT people have assimilated. That's why, where's the outrage when people are killed? Where is that? It's because, okay, if we could be safe, then and fit in more, but that is also bullshit, because the world that we exist in and the world that is oppressing us is a cis hetero white patriarchy that I don't want to be a part of, and I don't want to assimilate to that, right? So it's important for us to push back on those dynamics and push back on those constructs, and sometimes that means making our own path, right?
Thank you. So we have a couple quick minutes. We have a couple comment way in the back, and then I saw your hand was up here. Can you explain, please, what assimilation is? Yes. You want to explain? Yeah. So audience question was explain assimilation. So assimilation is giving up a piece of your identity to fit to a larger dominant society. So in this country, it means cisgender, white, male, to align ourselves with the dominant, those that have the most privilege, to give up a piece of ourselves to fit in, to feel like we're fit in for safety. Boop and boop. Go ahead.
Well, my name is Derek. I was born, raised here, but I live in New York. And it's just kind of weird coming back and seeing the separation. And I guess like being there is very separated too. Like, these people live here, this community's here, there, but everybody's kind of forced to deal with each other. So, what can you do? There's somebody next to you all the time.
Yeah.
So it's just like how here, where everything's a little more spread out and a little more segregated, instead of waiting to be included in things. How about going in and like including yourself? Like, I know this club is mainly this group or this group, but hey, I'm coming to have a good time too. So like kind of forcing people to be bothered with you or to accept you. It kind of seems like it's easier to, I don't know, force people into, you're going to accept me because I'm here.
Yeah.
So, like, what is being done here to, because it's really kind of sad to see it. I haven't seen it in so long, so it's just really kind of jarring to see people have to actually have this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. So for the folks online, kind of the gist of the conversation is you're from here, went to New York for many years, came back, and seeing the stark differences in our communities and being separated. And in New York, yes, there is separation, but you also are on top of each other. You see each other all the time. And so the question was, what does it mean for marginalized folk to go into these larger spaces and be like, this space is also for me as well? And is that happening here at all? So that was kind of the question / comments. I want to get that. And I also, there's Red back there. You had your hand up for a minute. Oh. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I'm an old activist that pretty much gave up. And for many, many reasons, I was like back when we actually had an LGBT community center. Passages had their space, like mentoring, talk show, 10th Voice, did all that. And I stood freezing on the corner with my signs, and I said, you know what? It's not working. Nobody's listening to me. I've been standing out here. People are shouting obscenities at me as they drive by. Tired of this, done. Young people, take it. And then I see you young people, and you make me so proud. You make me so proud because, look, I'm hard on young folk. Y'all get on my nerves. What you're doing today is important. I want you to continue. I want you to encourage us old activists who gave up because we got tired of just dealing with this and it felt like nothing was going to ever change. And I want to challenge everybody in here today. First of all, you got to get real comfortable in your own skin. real, and I'm white folk, be comfortable being white. Brown folk, be and then we're gonna step out here and we're gonna just be ourselves. Everybody's asking, what can I do? Let me tell you something, be yourself.
Be yourself.
Be yourself. Nobody wants you to go out here with your cape on and save the day. Just be you in the spaces that you're given to be in. Because listen, I was 22 years old. My two best white male trans friends dragged me to Sidekicks, and I was like, not going there. And they was like, you're gonna have a great time, bro. And I'm like, and I stood outside and I was like, oh, what's this gonna be? And I had the best time of my life. And I walked through the door and there was old men with beards that was like, you wanna, boot scoot boogie? I'm like, yeah. Because I'm comfortable enough in my sexuality and my blackness that I can boot scoot boogie with a bear.
I know. Yeah.
I'm another one. People look at me, what are you? I'm me. Okay? People gonna judge you anyway. They're already talking behind your back anyway. They already got something to say negative anyway. So whatever, just be you. And then what you'll find is just like what happened with her. She didn't even know people were advocating on her behalf just by being her. And you on your job, kid, I know the struggle is real. Because I did the same thing when I was a teacher. I'm like, well, I wear a suit today. But you don't understand that while people are watching silently, they're taking notes. Absolutely. And they're saying she is strong enough to stand in her own skin. And they're like, that's like awesome. They're going to go tell people, and they could be doing things on your behalf you don't even know about. So just all I want to encourage you is stop staying in safe spaces. I know we got to protect ourselves. I'm not, I'm packed, so. But get out there. Go try something. Stop being all rigid and stuff. Get out there, try something.
So I also I'm not going to try to encapsulate that, but essentially be yourself. Take your people with you. Wakanda forever. And boot scoot boogie with bears. And don't be a dick. So with that, I want to give, so we're about out of time, and I see many other hands that are popping up, but I want to give our panelists a last point to speak. And there's a one-click one. Is it going to be quick? I see one. I see you. You going to be quick, Korea? You're going to be quick. I want Elizabeth to go, and then Korea. Go ahead.
I just want to thank her.
Yeah.
Because there are times I want to give up. I don't want to show movies. I don't want to be on production teams. I don't want to serve on a board. I don't want to do the 10th voice. I'm tired of reading books for the book club. Let somebody else do it. And when I was asked to be on this panel, I thought, no, I'm 66 and I don't have to. And then I thought, Bethany asked me, she does the hard work. She and Nicole are two young people who are doing it. And there are others here. Mm-hmm. We see them all around. I thought, okay, I'll go talk. And so, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you to the panel. What I got from the panel was the divide in our community. A lot of us know that we're in this room, that we've been fighting this fight for years. I turned the big 4-0 this year. I've been fighting this fight in Kansas City for the divide for about 15 years myself, and we all continue to do it. And something that you said that everybody was missing over, you're right, we're so divided by each group and each person. Something you mentioned in the back about coming into the room, sometimes even as colored people, we come into the room, we sit at the table and be quiet and don't open our mouths. And the problem is open your mouth. And then when we get to those tables, white or black, we have to speak up. If we don't speak up, nothing will happen. Some of us right now in this room are sitting at them tables and ain't doing nothing about it. We can't sit at these tables and do nothing about it. We gotta be about it. All my whole gay life, I fought for the whole color community, for all of us as a whole. My new mission is trans. I can't take a stand and hold the whole community in my back. It takes all of us together, working together with each one of our subdivisions to make it stronger. And anybody take anything from this room is be stronger. Come out of them safe spaces like she said in the back. We can't always be safe. You gotta be bold. Bold is the word we need to take. Be bold and empower. That's all I want to say.
Okay, just a little bit. Okay, so I think that was our final word. That was a good one. Be bold. All right, y'all. So I want to give a round of applause again for the panel. Thank y'all. And to our first panelist, actually the first panel, if y'all could come up here as well, if you're still here, panel number 1 that started us out today. To the audience, y'all are here. I know y'all are on Facebook Live. And my understanding is Facebook Live will also be available once this stops, so you can also go and review and see the comments that happen. And where's our folks that put this together? I see Star. Don't be trying to hide, Star. And Melissa, and the KCAVP crew, and Bethany, and I'm gonna give y'all the last word. I know. Come on, Star. Come on, somebody.
Tell her again. Oh, hey, Facebook. Just want to thank everyone for coming. We really appreciate hearing your voices, panelists. Thank you very much. Please stay tuned for additional panels we'll have. One of them will talk about access to healthcare. That includes like healing modalities. How do we heal, and where are those spaces that we need, or the modalities that we need to be able to heal, because therapy doesn't work for all of us, right? Another panel we'll be discussing is inclusivity in religious spaces, or lack thereof, and spirituality. So definitely touching on spiritual abuse and religious abuse coming from either the church or your place of worship. So thank you all. Don't forget the festival. Come out and have fun with us, July 14th and 15th. Look out on the Facebook page, Outskrts with no I, and Outskrts.com is our website.
Really quick, I wanted to give a special shout out to Diane for being our moderator, as usual, coming through. Outskrts Planning Committee, it's a lot of us. Bethany does all of our social media, formings, all that stuff. She's really great. And then the Kansas City Anti-Violence Project for providing the space. The astonishing Alpha New Chapter for always being there and running point on volunteering. Side note, there are volunteer sign-ups in the back. If you're interested in vendoring or volunteering, please do that. And as well, I'm gonna say this wrong. Creative group, what's your name? Alias, as in alias. Alias Creative Group for capturing the moment. We did have some sound issues on the first half, but we will be posting the videos here shortly, so you can reference those to go back. You have anything to say? You sure? She's like me. No, I'm good, thanks. No. Yes, please fill out the community assessment. We want to make impact change, and as a lot of us know, without any data, we can't do that. So please, please, please take the time out to fill that out and sign up for stuff. I know we have a ton of folks who've asked for vendor packets. Those are on our website or will be in the next couple of days. You want to wrap up, we debriefing, you got all that info.
Okay. Put your ideas up on that back panel if you feel compelled to say something, like share your ideas on the postings.
Yes, and thank you all again. And Star said data. Yes, we do need the surveys for data, but we also want to know what you all need. We want to be able to meet the needs of our community, and we want to know what you all need, because we are working overtime to make sure that it happens. So thank you all again.
Yeah.